Mark Robinson is facing calls to drop out of the race and resign from his current office after CNN uncovered disturbing posts that Robinson allegedly made online. The deadline to replace Robinson on the ballot has passed, but some Republicans are concerned he could drag down other GOP candidates running in North Carolina.
And happy Saturday, and welcome to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. It is Saturday, September 21st, 2024. We're 40-some days from Election Day. And so I got to have Val Atkinson here so we can talk about it. Hey, Val.
Hey there, Ed.
Well, in the lead-in, we saw your good friend and pal, Mark Robinson. He has some problems, Val. And I want to start there. We live in North Carolina. People who watch the show from all over the country and actually from all over the world, they know we live in North Carolina. So we talk about it a lot because North Carolina is a very important cog in this whole piece about who's going to be president of the United States. But also, North Carolina is a really, really interesting state, period. Let's start with Mark Robinson. What problem does Mark Robinson have today, Val?
Mark Robinson is what we call a dead man walking. There is no path, there is no way he can win the election in 2024. He knows that. Everybody else knows that. Mark Robinson is not well off financially. Mark Robinson is holding on to this position he has as a source of income access. Once this is over, he'll be scraping like a lot of other people, trying to find out how he's going to support his family and maintain his household. But he knows that he has no path to victory as far as his gubernatorial aspirations are concerned. And one of the things that probably hurts him dearly is the fact that his mentor, his chief supporter, as it were, is shunning him now and dodging him and doesn't want to talk to him. And I speak of none other than the presidential nomination of the Republican Party, Donald John Trump. He is dodging Mark Robinson because he understands as well that coattails run both ways. You can get on them and they'll ride you into victory. You can get on those coattails and they can also ride you into defeat. So right now he knows that Mark Robinson has no chance of winning. Mark Robinson is a pariah. Mark Robinson is nuclear. Everybody's staying away from that guy. He's bad news. So it's just a matter of time now before Mark Robinson will not be on the lips of all North Carolinians, and he will be a has-been. I expect that Josh Stein will be the next governor of North Carolina. He will win this election by double digits, by at least 10 percentage points.
Well, that's a prediction that I think you can take to Vegas and probably make some money. But here's the deal, Val. When will Negroes like Mark Robinson realize that they don't get the same grace that their white counterparts get? I saw a comment from Ted Budd, who is a senator from North Carolina, and Tom Tillis, and they talked about how disgusting, some of the allegations are. Adults can do whatever they want to. I mean, if he was on Nude Africa or whatever, blah, blah, blah. If he wants to call himself the Black Nazi, blah, blah, blah. If he's on Ashley Madison looking for somebody to hook up with other than his wife, blah, blah, blah. A lot of them do it too. As a matter of fact, there's this one guy who used to be president of the United States who slept with a porn actress when his wife was pregnant. And none of them say that's disgusting. So I think Herschel Walker, Mark Robinson may want to give him a call. It talk about what happens when you fall out of the graces of your white benefactors. Mark Robinson rose to fame by going to Guilford County, North Carolina, up in Greensboro county commission meetings and railing about gun control, where the county commission didn't have nothing to do with guns. But people on the right are so prone to latch on to people who, make a lot of noise, and he immediately became a person that could run for lieutenant governor who's never even run for anything. I think Mark Robinson's real problem is that at some point there was some things that he never would have imagined would have came to light because he's not sophisticated enough to know how opposition research and politics work, right? And I'm pretty sure people had this information for a long time, and they waited to the right time to drop to make sure Mark Robinson paid the ultimate price, which is to get out of the way, because they fear that he maybe could have won. Right. And Val, you worked on political campaigns. You know about how opposition research worked. And then Mark Robinson, back in the day when he was using his real email address, he had no idea he was going to ascend to where he's not supposed to. Right. So I'll leave that with Mark Robinson. I was downtown Raleigh yesterday, Val, and I saw the cameras, MSNBC, CNN, you name it, BBC, everybody was down there, Sky News. They all had camped out downtown near the lieutenant governor's residence. And, the story is the story. I think, like you said, he's done. And hopefully he'll just go his way. But here's the knock-on question, Val. Does that help on the presidential side? A lot of money is coming into North Carolina in the way of campaign ads. And Kamala Harris has a new ad that features Mark Robinson. Let's take a look at what we're talking about.
And he's been an unbelievable Lieutenant Governor, Mark Robinson.
For me, there is no compromise on abortion.
I think you're better than Martin Luther King.
We could pass a bill saying you can't have an abortion in North Carolina for any reason.
The abortion in this country, it's about killing a child because you aren't responsible enough to keep your skirt down.
I've been with him a lot. I've gotten to know him, and he's outstanding.
Donald Trump and Mark Robinson. They're both wrong for North Carolina.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
So clearly, Val, the Harris campaign ties Mark Robinson to Donald Trump there. How does that help Kamala Harris? Is North Carolina really in play on the presidential side? We've already predicted that Robinson's going to lose for governor. What about Kamala Harris? Is she going to get the 16 electoral votes for North Carolina?
Well, she may not get a lot of converts to change their mind and vote for her instead of Donald Trump. What I think is more plausible here is the possibility that some people may just leave that column blank and not vote for anyone, which in reality, that is an advantage for Harris. If some of Trump's supporters decide not to vote for him and to take the zero option, we used to call it, which means doing nothing, and just vote for people at or below the gubernatorial election. That way, Harris can really do well in trying to put North Carolina under her belt and not one more piece on her gun there. If that happens, if Harris wins North Carolina, that almost makes Pennsylvania irrelevant. People talk a lot about how important Pennsylvania is, but if Harris wins North Carolina and Georgia, or either of the two, she can still win by losing Pennsylvania. So this is a very, very important piece of strategy within this presidential election. And I know that it's probably keeping the GOP strategists up late at night. Some of them haven't slept in 2 or 3 days since it came down. And I'll just digress to one point you made about the opposition researchers having this information a long time on Robinson, but not bringing it forth to right now. they brought it forth at a time when they only had about a day or so to make a decision as to whether to remove him from the ballot or not. Because North Carolina law says if you're going to remove him, so you got to do it in a timely manner so we can amend the ballots if we need to do that to take him off the ballots or whatever. So you got until 11:59 p.m. to do it. And of course, they were trying to figure out what to do, what not to do. So they just let it ride. And he did not get taken off the ballot. It was a good strategy, a good piece of opposition research there.
No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, they waited until the best possible time to drop it. Now, in a real sense here, what I think it's shown to me is that politics, I'm not going to say it's gotten, out of hand or terrible or whatever. It's always been. What is clear to me is that people are still prone to follow people in a cultish way. They're slavish to this ideology that, of being in people's bedrooms and all that stuff. So all you got to do if you're a Republican is say those words. They don't do a good job of vetting their people, Val. I'll say that because Herschel Walker and Mark Robinson have proven that. They're so desperate to have a Negro that toes the line that they don't check the ones they have. So Herschel Walker's beating women and Mark Robinson's beating something else. Because he liked to hang out at the pawn shop in Greensboro. So we'll leave it at that. That was a bad pun, but I get a pass on that one because he was doing it, and he knows he was, and he shouldn't lie about it. Let's switch gears, Val. This is also something that is very uncomfortable. Let's take a look at this clip from Springfield, Ohio.
Across this town, we have not found anyone who has seen pet-eating immigrants. The dogs seem safe. The cats are roaming loose. The instinct then may be to laugh at this Trumpian rhetoric. Indeed, the Haitians of Springfield can see the funny side too.
The Haitian don't hitting the cat, the dog. No, it's not no culture to hitting that.
Amantes, Louis.
But within this cat and dog story, there are some actual truths, because there are huge challenges here over immigration.
This is your passport and your paperwork.
Vitio is one of 15,000 who have arrived here in this town from war-torn Haiti since 2020. The pressures on services and society are understandable.
You left your country, you know what, you left your country, the working, go school, study. It's okay.
So, Val, we talked a little bit about this already last week. J.D. Vance knows he was lying when he brought up that people were eating cats in Springfield. And he says that, I can make up stuff because it allows us to talk about immigration. He don't want to talk about no damn immigration, Val. This is part of, again, the same sort of strategy I was saying that the Republicans always fall back on. It's these culture issues. And here you got an easy target. There's these immigrants and they're colored and a few of them been in accidents driving. So the lady loses her cat and all of a sudden niggas are eating cats. And I did say the N-word because that's what they're thinking when they're spouting this rumor. It's not even a rumor. It's a lie, and they know it's a lie so they can influence their core constituents. Talk to me about what's going on in Springfield, and is there any way to undo this, or are they going to go all the way to Election Day, making these people in Springfield miserable?
Well, it depends upon the media. J.D. Vance was absolutely right about one thing. He did it to control the media. And you got national media several days, a long time after that this is still their number one lead in line, that this is the main thing that they are talking about, because it's exciting to talk about that kind of stuff like that. But I think the media is catching on to JD right now. They know that the kryptonite for a guy like JD Vance, who likes to try to control the media, is to ignore him. That's his kryptonite. And the more oxygen you give him, the more legs you give the story and that kind of thing, the better he likes it. He doesn't like it if you call him dumb, stupid, if you bring up 24 pounds of evidence that he's wrong or whatever. He doesn't care at all, because you're talking about him and what he wants you to talk about. So he wins, and that's all he wants to do. So he even admitted it. He admitted that I made all this stuff up to get you guys to talk about what I want you to talk about and get off of this Kamala Harris boat that you're riding on and that sort of thing. So most media outlets have said, okay, you got us that time and we're going to back off. You won't get us again, okay? And they're moving on to something else now. But I thought it was a hell of a revelation that he admitted to the media that I did this to trick y'all. I did this to get y'all to talk about what I want you to talk about, and get off of this praising Kamala so much and that sort of thing. So if I had to tell another lie, I'll do it,
Yeah,
But
he was very nonchalant about it.
yeah, I mean, he could care less. So we'll see. We'll see when he comes up with the next salacious lie, whether or not MSNBC, CNN, Fox, and all those guys rush up the cameras and the microphones to his face and, what do you mean, Mr. Vance, by this? And we have evidence that didn't happen. What's your response to that? We'll see if that happens again, or we'll see if these guys have learned their lesson now.
Yeah. Well, before we take our break, the last piece to this is Aurora, Colorado. And like I said last week, I was in Aurora for 3 or 4 days a week or so ago. And here's a real short clip, and then we'll talk about it.
The apartment complex were no gang members, but a full-blown media circus, something that the building's residents, most of whom immigrated illegally from Venezuela after the rise of authoritarian leader Nicolas Maduro, couldn't have imagined. After all, robberies and brazen criminal incidents are actually pretty common in Aurora.
I mean, look, Aurora's always had gang issues. You can go back to the 70s. The Colfax corridor's always had some gang issues. We've always had turnover of different cultures that have kind of lived in that area, and every culture kind of brings its own gang issues with them.
And there's a lot of different hoods in Colorado, but Aurora is one of the more well-known ones, if not the most well-known one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's never really been sweet out in Aurora, you know what I mean?
But this particular incident caught the eye of the national media for 2 reasons. For one, the recently arrested main perpetrator, nicknamed Cookie,
I don't know if you saw the man, he goes by the nickname of Cookie,
is a member of the multinational Venezuelan gang called Tren de Aragua.
So it's Tren de Aragua, and they started as a prison gang in Venezuela, quickly grew within the prison system there, and became more of a transnational criminal organization.
But secondly, and most importantly, Cookie, along with his companions, are migrants who, like 11 million others living in the United States right now, hop the US-Mexico border illegally.
and I had a huge issue with that. And so I started asking APD leadership, what are we doing?
So Val, the other brown people, they're not as brown as the people in Springfield. They're light brown. They're from Venezuela. And there was, I won't even say a grain of truth in this whole notion that gangs are taking over Aurora, because they're not. I mean, I was in Aurora. I drove around. I went around. I even went down to the apartment complex that's in question. There were regular people living there. But there was an incident that happened with some people who probably were in a gang who was shaking down somebody for some money, and they had some guns, and it was caught on somebody's doorbell camera. And then as a consequence, now Donald Trump not only says he's going to Springfield, but he's also going to Aurora. And then he repeats his promise that they're going to do mass deportations. So as we wrap up here, Val, tell me how you do mass deportations, number one. And number two, who do you deport? The people in both Aurora and in Springfield are mostly here legally, as registered, refugees, people seeking asylum or whatever. So does it not matter to Trump and Vance that people have status and they're supposed to be here and they're seeking citizenship?
Well, it doesn't matter because it's not going to happen. This is another strategy to get more Hispanic votes. And people may wonder, how can you threaten to deport 25,000 Hispanics and then get more Hispanic votes? Because there's a large cadre of people in that category who really support the deportation of people who are here illegally, because that gives them more status. I am here legally, so you don't need to treat me like I'm some outlier anymore. I'm the real thing, so I can feel safe. I can feel more like a real American. So this is a campaign ploy to get more immigrant support by telling people I'm going to deport all of those illegals. As you were alluding to, Ed, there's no logical, practical way to do this or to make this happen. They don't need a way to make it happen because it ain't going to happen. This is he's just trying to get votes right now is all he's trying to do.
Yeah, you say shit enough times, it becomes true, right? At least in the wacko's head who wants to believe it in the first place. Yeah, I hear some music, Val. So let's take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk about Georgia and something they did yesterday, their Board of Elections, that I think is going to have a serious impact on the outcome of the election. And I need for you to give me a history lesson on how the Electoral College works again, because I need to keep reminding people every week about what's at risk here. So stay right there. We'll be right back after this message.
Even the mighty might not see it coming. It's prediabetes, and it captures 1 in 3 adults. But you can escape. Take the 1-minute prediabetes risk test to know where you stand and prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. Be your own hero on smartphones everywhere at doihaveprediabetes.org.
And welcome back to our second segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. It is Saturday, September 21st, 2024. We're barreling towards the general election. A lot of states are already mailing out ballots, and North Carolina is among them, but also Georgia. And I want to go there first, Val. Yesterday, the Georgia State Board of Election passed a contentious, according to Georgia Public Broadcasting's website, a contentious new rule that will have serious impacts on the election. And nearly every county board chairman and the Georgia Attorney General, Chris Carr, said, don't do this. And what this is they're requiring the hand counting of ballots on election night. And there's no proof that hand counting is any more reliable than the machine counting. So why the hell do you get a voting machine if you're just going to turn around and require hand counting? But I digress. Here's the problem, Val. A lot of election directors in those counties, there's 100 counties in Georgia, a lot of them said that here's the problem. There's a 90-day quiet period before the election. You're not supposed to do any new rules or make any changes in election law. That's one of the big things. So tell me your read on what the Georgia State Election Board is trying to do here and what the real impact's going to be.
They are trying to gum up the works, Ed, as it were. They are trying to get to a point that the whole ascertainment certificates is not finished in time. They can't certify the election, and that would cause problems, especially if Kamala Harris Kamala Harris won the state of Georgia, that's 16 electoral college votes that she didn't get. And the ruling says that you must have 270 to win, not that you must have a plurality and have more than your opponent or your opponents, but that you must have 270 to win. And if not, the election gets thrown into the House. That's their strategy. That's where they're trying to go with this thing. And Donald Trump went so far as to call out the names of these people that he thought were patriots and on his side, and he named them each by full name, that they were really, really great people that should have the support of all. So this is a strategy that they're trying to do. And many people are saying with over 5 million ballots to count, that it will be almost impossible to get it done by these dates. Let me throw out a few dates so that everybody knows that the election is going to be on the 5th of November. But that's not the real election when everything happens. The next date of consequence is actually December the 17th. That's when the Constitution says that the electors from each state must get together and vote for the president and for the vice president. That's going to be on the 17th, because the Constitution always says that date is going to be the first Tuesday after the second Wednesday in December. And I know for some, it's kind of spinning your head around. What was wrong with these crazy people? Why they just can't pick a date like they do for January 20th? January 20th is inauguration day, and it doesn't matter what day of the week it falls on. That's when we're going to inaugurate the president. But the Constitution says the first Tuesday after the second Wednesday is the date that the electors get together and really elect the president of the United States. And the vice president, because they are elected on separate ballots. And the Constitution also says, just a little tidbit for you, that one of which, meaning between the vice president and the president, one of which cannot be must be of a different state than the electors. Now, what the heck does that mean? That means that a president would be a fool to select somebody from his own state, because the electors then would not find one of those people different from the state that they belong to. So now you're going to lose all of those electoral votes. Or this one of these people, the president or the vice president, is going to have to change their state of residency. And if it's a U.S. senator, that could be a problem, you know. So it gets complicated and whatever, but the dates are for this year, the 17th of December is when the electors meet in their state to vote for the president. But now 6 days before that, we have something called Safe Harbor Day. That's when these certificates of ascertainment must be sent to the archives in Washington. Now, what this certificate of ascertainment says, we have counted all the votes. We have determined who the winner is in our states. We have assigned the mission to the electors. And within this documentation that we are sending you, all of that's there. These are a list of our electors. These are the decisions that we've made. We've given them the authority to exercise this vote on behalf of X, Y, and Z. So after November the 5th, which is the day that you and I and all the rest of our citizens vote, then you come to the safe harbor date of December the 11th. That's when the certificates of ascertainment have to be forwarded to Washington. And 6 days after that is when the electors really meet in their home states and vote for the president and the vice president of the United States. A little complicated, but that is how we elect president and vice president, Ed, for the United States of America.
So, Val, I had this little thing on the other program that I do called Connections. We had Civic Sunday a couple of Sundays ago, and I asked questions about from the citizenship test whether or not people could answer them. Unfortunately, we couldn't take phone calls because it would have been interesting how people answer those calls, would have answered those questions. Because I asked questions similar to some of the arcania that you're talking about that's in the Constitution, that people who are taking the citizenship test have to know. Because one of the questions was, could somebody be an elector, for somebody from the same state, stuff like that. There were some really hard questions on the citizenship test around elections and that kind of stuff. But it also had questions like, how many political parties there are. And there's a lot of political parties, but in America, we've set up this system where we have real rules like that arcania you were talking about. And then we have these rules that everybody believes are rules, like going to the polls on election day and the person with the most votes winning. It only counts in your state. It doesn't count nationally because in 7 of the last 8 presidential elections, the Democrats have won, and not by a little bit, by a lot, a popular vote. So the only way, to your point, the only way for the Republicans to kind of, they're on a sinking ship. They know they haven't won national elections, outright for a long time since Ronald Reagan. So what do? You throw a monkey wrench into it. You have Georgia count votes by hand, which nobody in Georgia wants to do. I was reading earlier, one of the county board people who's a Republican, he's like, listen, I can't get people to volunteer for the job now because y'all scared everybody. So who am I going to get to count these that I can get trained, well, one cleared, then trained, and then be willing to sit for days and days and miss their job to count votes when we got a machine that can count them? So the only thing you could be doing is trying to drive to that date of uncertainty where you may not be able to make some of those deadlines that you just talked about. And then it throws it into the House of Representatives. And you talked about this enough times, I think our audience knows that if it's in the House, the Republicans win. There's no two ways about it. They're more Republican-controlled houses, state houses, than Democrats, so they win. They all you need is 26. They probably got 30 that they can win with. Well, here you go, Val. So Georgia has a mess on its hands. This will go to court because even some Republicans have filed briefs saying this is not tenable, that 90 days before the election, you should not be changing rules. And we'll see what happens. Do you have any prediction about if it gets to the federal courts, what will happen? Or is this going to be election night, Georgia's going to be counting by hand?
Well, I think if it gets to the federal courts, I think that somebody in the system will have an epiphany or something, and they'll say, this is crazy. Let's stop playing these games. We know what you're trying to do. You're trying to throw a monkey wrench in here so that we'll say that there's too much disparity between the hand-counted number and what the machines say, so we have no confidence in the election. Let's have a do-over or just go on forward with the other 50 states and count them and see if anybody can get to 270, without these 16 votes. They're hoping that kind of stuff happens, but I don't think it will. I think we'll go on. And the 16 electoral college votes from Georgia will eventually be counted. I am predicting that Kamala Harris will take those 16 votes.
Man, look, if you got money, call Val, because he's placing bets today.
That's right.
He's giving you some sure winners. Now, I want to just ask him about the horses later. See what he can tell me about that. Or NFL for tomorrow, my fantasy football. Anyway, Val, let's go to the federal level. Two pieces of proposed legislation this week. One said that they wanted to have a law that says people who are not citizens can't vote. Guess what, Val? Constitutionally, and in every state, it's already illegal for people who are not citizens to vote. And then the other piece of legislation, which I thought was probably more needed, was provide Secret Service protection for all federal, president and vice president candidates to beef up that, because people are crazy as hell. And clearly with the two assassination attempts against Donald Trump, well, one was closer to a real assassination attempt. I don't know about homeboy from Greensboro, what he was up to in the woods with the gun. And we know there's been threats against all of the candidates. What do you think about those two pieces of the one that passed, actually the Secret Service one, but the one that was proposed about banning non-citizens from voting? What the hell, Val? It's already, that's on the citizenship test too.
Yeah, well, that's another Republican campaign strategy. We got to give these guys credit. Somebody's doing some deep thinking. The strategy behind that was to force Democrats to take a vote against that bill. Okay. Then their strategy, their talking points would be Congressman X or Senator Y would not vote to keep non-citizens from voting. He would not say that non-citizens should not be voting. And the reason he won't make that decision is because it's the same reason he's got a problem with the border situation. Excuse me. It's the same reason, because he wants to flood America with non-citizens so he can get them to vote. That's how they've been winning elections over these past few years. That's what, all of that's a lie. You and I know that. But that's their plan. Hell, they've sold bigger lies to these cultist people, So that's what they're trying to do with that. They're trying to get the Democrats to go on record to vote against keeping non-citizens from voting. You and I know that's a lie, because we already got a law for that.
Yeah, already have a law.
But this is their plan. But the good part about it is, our people already know that. They're not falling for the bait. They're saying, hey, let's move on to something else. We're not going to talk about that because we already got a law against that. Let's move on to something else. But that's their strategy. That was their strategy, to use that as talking points in some of these tight races, to say my opponent won't vote against keeping non-citizens from voting. That's why we need better immigration laws, which I will give you. I'll build a second wall, and this time I'm gonna really have Mexico to pay for it.
Well, that's crazy. But and besides the point, guess what? I hear some music in my ear. Let's take a break. On the way out, you're going to see Jasmine Crokett. She's the congressperson from Texas. She had a really good point about how unqualified some people are, and the reason why Project 2025 hates DEI. So on the way out, you'll see that. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what's going on in the Middle East and a little bit more.
The only reason we're having this hearing is because somebody got their feelings hurt in a debate, and I don't understand why we're wasting taxpayer dollars. Next time, tell your big boy to show up and be ready to handle the woman in the room who hopefully will become the next president of the United States. Nevertheless, while we do have two amazing authors from Project 2025, which it seems like everybody got the memo, like, yes, I'm going to double down and say it's my thing, but I'm going to make sure I also say that it ain't our homeboys thing, because we know that it doesn't poll very well with the American people. people because the American people are woke enough to recognize that there is nothing good in it for them. And the final thing that I will say
Do you
is
know why
that
those
this
costs have
election,
increased
I didn't ask you a
substantially?
question. The final thing that I will say is that this election is the best example of why y'all are so afraid of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because then you can't have a simple-minded, underqualified white man somehow end up ascending. Instead, you've got to pay attention to the qualified black woman that is on the other side. And with that, I will yield.
Welcome back to our third and final segment of The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. That's Val Atkinson. We're chopping up today, talking about his homeboy, Mark Robinson, all his travails. We're talking about the lie about people eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio, the supposed gang takeover in Aurora, Colorado, which is also a lie. And we talked about some recent legislation and one rule change in Georgia that's going to have a devastating impact on the election for the people of Georgia and disenfranchise them if it actually stays on the books, which is they got to hand count every vote, despite the fact these counties investing money in voting machines. On the way back in, you saw a clip of some news about some pagers and some walkie-talkies exploding in Israel, Val. One, I didn't know people still use pagers, but that's a whole nother story. I knew they used those little walkie-talkies because in my business, some of the things I do, sometimes you're a whole building away from somebody, you need to talk to them in the engineering business, and you use these walkie-talkies to communicate because there's no cell phone coverage or whatever, especially when there's new construction. And apparently these things blew up, and they killed at least 37 Hezbollah operatives. Now, here's the problem. Since October of last year, the story is that they were fighting Hamas and the people in Gaza. Hezbollah is in Lebanon, Val. Hezbollah is in Lebanon. So that means that north of Israel, not to the West Bank and Gaza, we're talking about north into Lebanon is where they were making this incursion. So the Mossad, the Israeli secret police, somehow was able to detonate and start killing people in Hezbollah. For me, that's troubling because it's not a fair act of war to me, right? That's sabotage. And you're not in a declared war with anybody. So if you just start murdering people and having exploding walkie-talkies and pagers, I think that's a violation of international criminal law, but that's besides the point. I need for you to tell me, one, did you know people were still using pagers? And two, how the hell did Mossad get explosives in these pagers, and how long have they been out there?
Well, that's a good question. I didn't know people were using pagers either, Ed. Cell phones have become so ubiquitous that I didn't know that you could just grab at random 30 people off the street and ask how many of them don't have a cell phone, and you may not get any hands to go up. But at any rate, the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence, they've had this strategy for a long time. I heard a report yesterday, Ed, that said that these explosive devices that they managed to put into pagers have been there since 2022, 2 years ago. It started with the manufacturer of these pagers that was done primarily in Taiwan. But the Taiwanese had a relationship or had a contractor's relationship with Hungary, of all places. And then Hungary had divided up their subdivisions into several different parts. And one of the people that they had given authorization to produce these cell phones had a relationship with Mossad, or the Israeli government. So that's how Israel got into this whole piece, to get those pagers that they knew that Hezbollah was using, and impact put into the pagers a small, very small explosive device about the size of an eraser on a pencil. And it was set up in such a way that these pagers would receive an error message that would tell them to press a certain button or do a certain procedure. And that procedure was what caused most of the phones to explode. And then, of course, as we know, the following day or day after that, there were walkie-talkie explosions. So all of this, as you said, and I think you are absolutely right, Ed, is a violation of the rules of war. It's against all international policies, rules, and standards about how to conduct war. We know that. Also, at the same time, we know that Israel has decided that Hezbollah needs to be the subject of preemptive strikes, because, as you said, it's not Hezbollah is not in Gaza. Hamas is not to the north of Israel, and the Hezbollah is a part of Lebanon. So why did Israelis strike Lebanon? They did it, according to the Israelis, as a preemptive measure because their intelligence has said that Hezbollah was on the path of attacking Israel. So they thought they'd attack them first and destroy their capability. And this was a defensive move. You know, I mean, I guess it's the same thing as say that I just have a feeling if, you know, the house that I broke into last week, if that pregnant lady in there has a child and takes it to birth, that once that child gets grown, he's going to come and get me. So I'm going to
take him out,
protect myself by killing the mama before she has the child. I mean, how stupid can you get? You know, how far can you go in saying that I can kill anybody I want in anybody else's country, just like they killed the head of a mosque in Iran? And along with that, some Iranian citizens and that kind of thing. And that's okay. When they did that, I asked the question, if an Iranian leader were in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, would it be okay for Israel to bomb Philadelphia, to kill him, along with some Philadelphia citizens? Would that be okay? How far are we going? How far are we going to go to allow Israel to forget about what happened in 1948, May the 14th, when she was given Palestinian land to set up her own government? And the people that were there already, when the Israelis were in Europe being treated badly by this guy named Hitler, the people that were already in the place that they call Israel right now were Palestinians. And for all you Christians out there, Jesus Christ was a Palestinian. Okay? They took that land from these people, they gave it to the Israelis, and then some of the relatives of the people who lost their land, their property, their lives to this decision are mad now, and they want their land back, and you call them terrorists. Somebody takes something from you, and if you ask for it back, you are a terrorist. Amen.
Well, ask the Native Americans too here. They can tell you a similar story.
Right.
And which again, causes me a great deal of consternation all the time, Val, because I know, you know, people want self-determination. They want to be able to govern themselves. They want to be able to live, their culture or whatever. And so if somebody shows up at your door and says, hey, I'm going to take this over. And that's what's been happening increasingly with the settlers. Now that Gaza has been completely cleared out, settlers are moving in the very far right in Israel they don't even listen to Netanyahu. They just take over some land and put up a settlement and say that it belongs to them. And then if you start to make incursions into Lebanon, I think that only increases the chance that this will go on. And I think that is what Netanyahu wants. The instability is the thing that keeps him in the good graces of the far right in Israel. And then people who are sort of on the liberal bent in Israel, a lot of them still have American citizenship. They get on a plane and fly back to Raleigh or New York or Florida. If things get too bad, right, they can leave. They can go to another place. And usually the left wing in Israel is like that. Their dual citizenship protects them a little bit. But the folks who are dyed in the wool and want Israel for Israel, and they don't care whether it's in the West Bank or the Golan Heights or wherever, then they're willing to kill just as much as Hamas is willing to kill. And I think, I need for people to talk about that a little bit more too. So anyway, I won't beat that dead horse. There's one other story I wanted to talk about, Val. And this is back on the American political side. We didn't talk about it before in the prep for the show, but as I was sitting here looking in the corner of my eye, and a story popped up about a young lady in Georgia who died waiting to get some medical treatment. Let's take a look at this clip and talk about it, because I want you to give me your assessment of how abortion is going to play in the election.
Now, according to a new report from ProPublica out today, we know that these bans have also resulted in the death of at least 2 patients in Georgia. This initial reporting focuses on the story of just one of those 2 patients, Amber Thurman. She was a 28-year-old single mother of 1. You can see a picture of her right there. She died on August 19th, 2022, just a month after Georgia's 6-week abortion ban went into effect. And because of that ban, Amber was forced to find care out of state in North Carolina. Now, when she returned home to Georgia, she had extremely rare complications, and on the evening of August 18th was rushed to the hospital after vomiting blood and passing out. As Amber's condition deteriorated due to acute severe sepsis, her doctors discussed initiating a procedure called a DNC, but Georgia had made performing that procedure a felony, with few exceptions. Any doctor who violated the new law could be prosecuted and face up to a decade in prison. So Amber waited, and she waited, and she waited. And after 20 hours, she was finally taken to an operating room. But by then, the situation was dire. And during the surgery...
So Val, this young sister, Kamala Harris brings her up at a rally in Atlanta. They said it was fully preventable, but she was so scared to go to the doctor and to get treatment because she knew it required a DNC. She found out a few days too late, and she tried to take the abortion pill herself and not seek medical care and dies. And then we've been increasingly hearing stories about things like that. So I know it's kind of somber thing to end up with on the show today, but how is abortion in women's health concerns going to play? Kamala did a big thing with Oprah the other night. Women seem to be very engaged, yada, yada, yada. And abortion rights have been restored, have been on the ballot in places like Kansas, where it won in Kansas, of all places, where, it's a red state. So these things happening in places like Georgia, will they have an impact nationally on the election?
It would have a very, very large impact. Abortion is right behind Biden's decision to get out of the race. In terms of those things that are at the top of the list that is propelling Kamala Harris right now into the White House. Abortion is a big, big winner for Democrats this year. Up and down the ballot, all across different states. Because what is at stake here is a woman's right to choose. And even those people who are suburban women who are conservative leaning, people who are almost apolitical and don't even vote sometimes, or most of the times, they know that an abortion right, the right to have an abortion, is the thing between them and a life-changing decision. It changes your life when you have an offspring considerably. It changes your life. And women want that decision to be theirs, whether they want to carry to term or abort. For whatever reason, that's their decision to make. And some of those people that normally would vote Republican or normally would stay at home have been convinced now that if I stay at home and I get pregnant, it's on me. I'm saying that I'm giving my decision-making ability and authority over to the government, and more particular, over to conservatives that I may agree with on some issues, but I can't let them determine what I do with my body. This is a mega directional sea change type of political strategy that I think is going to cost Donald Trump the White House.
Yeah, it's big, and I believe it will carry a lot of weight. A lot of women are energized. The event with Oprah was a big deal, and then there's been all these Zoom meetings and with women from all over the country. More Republicans are signing letters saying that even Republicans that have worked in the Bush and Reagan administration saying, and Trump administration saying, we can't vote for this guy. It's a bridge too far. Hopefully the MAGA crowd is the 30% we think they are, right? And with a smattering of people like Mark Robinson who are going to the polls for them. Hey, I hear some music, Val. Tell me real quick, anything we need to know about, what we need to keep our eye on for the week?
Voting. You got to go out and vote. Get that guy, put him in the seat with you. Go down the street, get two more. If your back seat is full, put him in the trunk. But take them to the poll. Take them to the poll with you, guys. I'm telling you, you can't do without it.
Yeah.
You can't do without it. Women, when a guy asks you out for a date, ask him, is he registered to vote? That's the first response.
Yeah.
We got to get this done, folks. No kidding aside. Register to vote. Call, go down, go online, whatever. Check to see if your voter registration status has changed. And if it has, do something about it.
Yeah. And I'll go a step further, Val, and say early vote if you can. In-person early vote is my choice. But I wouldn't even chance. I mean, if you have to get a ballot sent to you, by all means do. But if you can go in person early vote, but if you do in a place like North Carolina, Wisconsin, and a lot of other places, take your ID with you. That way you won't get turned away there as well. Anyway, listen, it looks pretty outside here today in North Carolina, so hopefully I can get some sunshine this weekend. Wherever you are, I hope you can do the same. What I always tell you to do, go out and do something good for somebody today. That's all I ever ask you to do, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
I've been there, certain things always remain.